Manchester United lose 1-0 to Rosenberg in the dying minutes of their first pre-season game. And well, to be honest, it was a very boring game. It was a bit of a snooze fest, conceding 20 shots, conceding in the last kick of the game. Very Manchester United of last season written all over it. But I am not worried. I think there's a massive overreaction online. This is a pre-season game against a side that is halfway through their season and is completely match fit and performing at their best, with predominantly, I'd say 90% of the players that are going to start for us next season weren't there. The new signings weren't there, and we saw Toby Collyer, Vitek and even Ennis all have really promising performances from the academy. And I thought, well, it's a bit boring me talking about the game, but I'm going to break down the game into 5 points where I can show you what we learned from the game in regards to Ten Hag's plan going forward. What we learn about, particular formations. We played a 4-2-3-1. Mason Mount played deep. We can learn about how Mason Mount may be utilised next season, how we may utilise Ugarte if we bring him in. So I'm going to break down the game, what we learned from the game, and talk about a couple of people, who was good, who was bad, and particularly what may be applied to next season from the game. So do hit that like button, do subscribe if you're new. Let's talk about Toby Collyer, the best outfield player for me. Vitek was man of the match, we will talk about him, but the best outfield player was Toby Collyer, and I think he's going to have a really big part to play next season. We know that he obviously signed a new contract with Manchester United. And one thing about Toby Collyer is, if you remember, we won the Carabao Cup. Maynard hadn't really played for United then, but Ten Hag gave him a big chat and was like, this will be you next year. He went up to Collyer out of all the academy players and had a big chat with him after the FA Cup. First season, Garnacho. Second season, Maino. Third season is believed to be Collyer and Amas are the ones to watch out for. But Collyer is 3 years older than Amas. He's more physically ready for the Premier League and first team football. Shea Lacey is another one, but he's very injury prone. So Collyer and Amas ahead of preseason were the ones that Ten Hag was most interested to integrate. Amas had a phenomenal season with the youth, but he's just turned 17. I think Amas just didn't look quite ready. He looked a little bit not physically ready. I think he needs another year in the academy, but we'll see what Amas does in the other preseason games, of course, because nobody really looked ready bar about 3 players. Now, Collyer was given captaincy. He's been given a new do at United. Ten Hag's had a lot of conversations with him, and it's been said that he is the guy that Ten Hag rates. Now, Collyer as a player, I'd probably compare him to Declan Rice. He does his best work in the dual pivot, is a 6'8" hybrid player that has a lot more sort of defensive security, more of a defensive-minded player. And he kind of reminds me of maybe Declan Rice if I was going to compare him to professional players. If you're looking at a long-term Kobbie Mainoo partner, if he reaches potential, that could be Toby Collyer. And considering that Ten Hag was looking to play a dual pivot and Toby Collyer is that long-legged midfielder, he could be a potentially good partner for Kobbie Mainoo as well. So what I liked about Toby Collyer is he looked physically ready. He looked better than Casemiro, had the athleticism needed to cover ground with ease. He looked physically ready. His legs, his strides, the way he could just cover ground, he looked physically very comfortable, was covering ground a lot. Now, in the new sort of world of football, the new era of football, those long-legged midfielders, Matt Mifa, Amadou Onana, Adam Wharton, are really, really sought after, particularly in the Premier League, where transitional approaches, covering large spaces, the intensity of the Premier League, and I thought that his sort of long-legged frame allowed him to cover space with ease. I think he was able to do the off-the-ball work with ease, and I think he physically looked a level ahead of everybody in the squad, not just comparing him to Casemiro in the first half, but everybody in the squad. He's 6 foot, he's strong, he looks physically ready to play first team football. I think that this could be his breakout year. I know it's only 45 minutes, but he just looked physically ready. Like, Mainoo looks so comfortable and composed. Collyer, he looks physically ready. He's obviously 20 years of age. He should be sort of, this is when he's going to come through or go out on loan. And he wanted the ball. He seemed to be everywhere. And I saw someone say something on Twitter like, do you think Ten Hag had a conversation with him before pre-season saying this is your chance to shine? Because he looked like he wanted it more than every other player on the pitch. He looked like he had a lot more to play for and a lot more to show his determination to get the ball. If Ethan Ennis had released the ball earlier, potentially he could have scored in one of the attacks. I thought he was predominantly the best player on the pitch. And with Toby Collyer, he's a long-legged midfielder that's able to cover ground, which is sought after right now, which is what Manchester United need. Potentially, and now obviously we were saying, maybe it's a bit early to say Kobbie Mainoo could potentially start for United, but he showed that. Collyer, if he reaches potential, keeps this up, has the attributes to potentially start for United next season against Kobbie Mainoo and break through like Kobbie Mainoo did. I think we have to bring in a DM, we'll have to bring in a Ugarte or someone, but I do think that Toby Collyer could do it. Now, he's never been as highly rated as Kobbie Mainoo as an academy player, but when you look at what we need in the profile, he is that kind of player. He was very comfortable at retaining possession. He's always been comfortable on the ball. retaining possession. He's not someone that's going to break down low blocks and, do loads of good creative work. He's more of a defensive player, but if you have him next to Kobbie Mainoo, that doesn't matter. He's a more similar profile to Declan Rice. He's controlling on the ball, retaining the ball. He moves the ball quickly. He lets the game tick. He loves to move the ball quick, but he plays those safe passes. We know from watching him last season, he's a good duel winner. He's good defensively, very good reading of the game, a very intelligent player that is extremely well disciplined, which Ten Hag will like. He can read the game well. But I think as well, one thing that he brought, he was given captain armband, which showed how highly rated he was his leadership. He played for Brighton, England, Youth Franks before moving to United, and he captained Brighton and England Youth Franks. Very highly rated player, Toby Collyer. I think he'll be one to watch in pre-season. I still think Harry Amos is one to watch, but I just think you can see where Harry Amos is 3 years younger than Collyer and might need another year in the academy to do with the physicality of it. I think he struggled a little bit physically as well. So I've just spent 5 minutes talking about Toby Collyer, and I don't want to sound like I'm hyping him up too much, but I'm just saying if someone's going to be on Mainoo, it's always said it's most likely to be him. And if you look up the profile we're missing and need to sign in the summer, he potentially has that. But not everyone is as special as Kobbie Mainoo, and I don't think he will be as good as Kobbie Mainoo, but I do think he's got that potential. Now, people are stressing, people are overreacting, people are on Twitter, Ten Hag out, boring football, crap football. As United faithful said, first pre-season game with youngsters against a team who are 14 games into their season, but some United fans want champagne football when the purpose of the game is to build match fitness. The desperation to slander Ten Hag, get every given opportunity is hilarious. This is a pre-season game, and the second half was academy players. The first half, other than Rashford, I don't think anyone in that first half was probably going to start for United next season. Casemiro probably won't be here. Mason Mount potentially could start. Wan-Bissaka we're looking to sell because he's got 1 year left on his deal, but could be back up. Johnny Evans could be back up. 4 players. In the summer season, 4 players. Like, nobody's going to start. So I don't know why people are reacting. These players that are playing aren't even going to start for us next season. Most of them are going to not be here. The majority of the people that played aren't going to be here or academy players. So why are you being negative? Why are you hating on a bunch of 17, 18-year-old players who aren't match fit, playing against professionals that are 14 games into their season? If you're hating, you're ridiculous. You're being silly. Judge pre-season after pre-season. And you can't judge pre-season anyway. Anyway, what we did learn and what's more interesting is Mount played in the parole. Mount didn't play as a 10. Mount didn't play. There wasn't 2 8s ahead of Casemiro. It was Mount and Casemiro in the pivot in the first half. Whereas last season, it was Casemiro, Mount, Bruno, Mainoo, Mount, Bruno. It was Mount and Casemiro in the pivot. Mount played a more defensive role. And I like that because I think the isolated 6 last season just didn't work. I think it caused the midfielders to struggle. Amrabat, Casemiro, whoever played there. And I think, potentially next season it'll be Agate, maybe even Amrabat if he signed, play deeper. Potentially Mainoo, Mount and Bruno will play. Potentially Collyer, Mainoo, Bruno could be. Potentially Mainoo, Agate, Bruno it could be. But I think potentially Mount and Mainoo will be more of the attacking player in the pivot. Bruno will be the 10 because he seems to be available every game. And then potentially you have Agate, maybe Collyer to rotate as the 6s in the pivot. I do think United's midfield could look something like that next season. I think Agate is what they want to do and bring in alongside Kobbie Mainoo once they offload Casemiro. Which brings us into man of the match, Vitek. He's 20 years of old. He looked very good. He needs a loan. He's a good player. He needs a loan. He needs some professional football. Like Kovar, we should keep onto him though. Give him a loan. See how he does. There's definitely a lot of potential there. They had 5 boost chances. They only scored 1. They had 22 shots on total. Vitek made 7 saves. Made some really good saves. Didn't put a foot wrong. Conceded a goal 8 minutes at the end, but that's just Manchester United falling asleep. Thought he had a good game. And then obviously the fifth thing, we looked below standard. Casemiro looked like he was ready for Saudi. He looked particularly off the pace, sliding around. I mean, we have to offload him. Preseason game, I know, but have to offload him. Ten Hag's comments after the game was the performance was below standard. This is not standard for top football. We can't be match fit at the moment. They have to be much better fitness level, but we, Man United, must perform better. Vitek did well. He has a great presence. I feel tired. It was good to have some minutes in my legs. They were very sharp. They're in the middle of the season, said Evans. So Vitek was good. Collyer was good. They were a lot fitter than us, a lot better match fit than us, and I think you'd expect that. But the standard of football, of course, could be better. But do not worry, do not overreact. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know who impressed you. I think Collyer was the best outfield player. Vitek was man of the match. Ethan Ennis showed some bright spots. I thought Mason Mount showed some bright spots as well. But yeah, it was just one of those games, wasn't it? It wasn't much happening. To be honest, I fell asleep for about 10 minutes of it. Thank you for watching. Bye.